Hello friends, let's talk about a comedy and romance movie. At the start of the movie, we are introduced to Barry, who is taking some people on a tour around his college. One of them comments on how ignorant Barry is, so he decides to tell them the story of his best friend. When the story starts, we see Josh recording a video for his long-distant girlfriend. While doing so, Barry and Ruben walks into the room. Barry is so interested in feeding Mitch the snake. Josh seems to be in a hurry to leave for class, so he asks Ruben to mail the tape to Tiffany. On his way to class, a girl named Beth stops Josh and invites him to a party later in the night. Meanwhile, we see a guy named Jacob hiding behind a tree and stalking Beth. He has a crush on Beth and is very clingy, but Beth doesn't like him at all. Afterwards, we see a lecturer named Anderson, who teaches ancient philosophy to a class Jacob belongs to. Jacob, the class captain, informs the class about the upcoming midterm exams, but he's rude about it. In the hallway, Jacob confronts Josh, and tells Josh to stay away from Beth. The lecturer comes out and reminds Josh that he has to secure a B+ grade in the philosophy exam, in order to pass this semester. After the class, we see Josh using a payphone to call his girlfriend Tiffany, but her roommate picks up and tells him that she hasn't been around for 2 days. Josh's friend Elle suggests that he should move on from Tiffany as she might have also moved on, but Josh dismisses it. Later on we see Josh entering house party. Ruben is smoking weed and sharing it with a girl, while Barry is upstairs having fun with some junior students. Elle starts an auction for female students, but Beth sees Jacob in the audience trying to bid, so she convinces Josh to outbid him. Afterwards, Josh wins the bid, and then they both go to the bedroom. She finds a card on a shelf and asks questions, but Josh says it's from his girlfriend Tiffany. Josh tells her that they got separated now, so they start to make out. She has an idea to record everything on a tape, so she puts on the camera and then they spend the night together. The next morning Josh's friends are gathered in his room and Josh tells them about the exciting night he had with Beth, but the guys doesn't believe it. When he gives them a hint of the tape, Elle suddenly grabs the tape and they turn off the lights to watch it. When they play it, but they see it's the tape that Josh had recorded for Tiffany. Ruben had mistakenly mailed tape to Tiffany. While Josh is worried about the tape, the phone rings and Tiffany leaves a message that her grandfather had passed away, and that's why she hasn't been able to talk to Josh for a few days. She says she is at her mother's place, and she won't be back in school till Monday. Josh then decides to drive to her college, and as he doesn't have enough money for a plane ticket, Elle offers to come along as well. They both then go to a junior student named Kyle, and then they ask him to come along with his car. Ruben also decides to go with them, but Barry opts to stay behind. Ruben then permits Barry to feed the snake the next day. The group eventually leaves for Tiffany's college, with Josh explaining how long the journey will be. Afterwards, Mitch takes out a mouse from the box and plays with it, but Beth arrives and asks for Nick. Barry mistakenly tells her that Josh has gone to Boston to visit his girlfriend, then Beth decides to visit the university to confront Josh and Tiffany. Later on we see the group buying some supplies, but they don't have any cash, so they use Kyle's credit card. They then take a shortcut to make their journey brief, but they encounter a broken bridge on the way. Elle suggests they should jump the car over the bridge with high speed, so Ruben makes the calculations and recommends the gear Elle should place the car. They are eventually successful in crossing the bridge, but the car gets destroyed in the process. They get out of the car as they are passing the blame to one another. The car explodes into flames. The next scene, we see Beth on a bus to Boston as she is talking to a woman about her heartbreak. Meanwhile, we see the group walking to a nearby motel and stays the night. The next morning Ruben talks to the receptionist to get some weed from him, but he responds in a very rude way. Meanwhile, we see Kyle's parents having breakfast at a restaurant, then a policeman arrives and tells them that they have found Kyle's car abandoned at a bridge. The police have also checked with the university and Kyle is nowhere to be found. Afterwards, we see Elle visiting a school for the blind. He meets a blind lady at the counter and tricks her into giving him the key to one of the buses. He returns with the bus to meet the guys, and then they get into it and continue their journey. On the road, the guys make a pit stop as Kyle has to go to the washroom. Josh makes a call to his professor from a pay phone, but Jacob picks up the phone and mimics the voice of the professor. Josh asks for an extension on his midterm exam, and then Jacob leads him to believe that he actually has gotten an extension on the test. When the professor comes, he lies and refuses to tell him what Josh said. The next scene, we see Beth finally making it to the University of Boston. She locates another Tiffany and tells her that her boyfriend is cheating on her. This Tiffany then loses her mind and destroys the car of her boyfriend, with the entire school watching in shock. Beth eventually realizes she was talking to the wrong Tiffany, and in a wrong school, so she regrets her actions. On the way back, a freak in the bus tries to get freaky with her, but she shoves him off and screams at his face. Meanwhile, the group decides to spend the night at the house of a cult group. Ruben uses his experience and convinces the doorman that he's one of them, so they are allowed inside. When they get to the dining hall, they figure out that this is a black fraternity house, so this gets them scared. The guys from the fraternity then pull a prank on the guys and Kyle passes out. When he wakes up, the friends enjoy the party at the fraternity house. A girl named Rhonda starts to like Kyle, so they spend some time together and end up making out. The next morning, they get back on the road, and then Kyle tells them about the fun he had last night. Ruben reminds them that they don't have enough cash, so they go to the sperm bank to make some extra cash. Meanwhile, back at Josh's apartment, Barry is trying to feed the snake, but it wouldn't eat the mouse. Beth comes and asks him why he had lied and sent her to Boston, but he tells her he meant Austin and not Boston. Jacob then appears and interrupts their conversation. He tells Beth that Josh is about to fail his exam as he doesn't have an extension for his absence. Suddenly Mitch bites Barry's hand and he throws the snake towards Jacob. Afterwards, we see the guys enjoying the road by singing a song. They stop at Barry's grandparents' house to spend the night, so they are welcomed and shown around the house. Afterward, we see Kyle's parents at the motel where the group had stayed the night before. They have tracked Kyle's credit card history to find the motel. Kyle's father shows the receptionist the picture of Kyle, so they check out the bill and figure out that Kyle might be headed towards Austin University. In another scene, we see Ruben smoking weed when Barry's grandfather named Jack comes along with his dog. He asks Ruben for the weed, so Ruben then shares some of his thoughts with him. Jack starts getting high and starts to imagine his dog talking to him. The next morning, the group says goodbye to Barry's grandparents and leaves. They reach the Tiffany's hostel and asks the guy at the counter for Tiffany's mail, but he declines, stating that it's against the policy. Kyle grabs the boy's arm, but he hits Kyle back and a fight starts. As Kyle tries to grab a fire extinguisher, Josh runs for the mail, but the security arrives and threatens everybody with pepper spray. Suddenly, Kyle's father also appears and pulls a gun from his coat. He thinks that Kyle has been kidnapped the whole time, but Kyle explains to his father that he'd been with his friends. Tiffany also arrives in a surprise to see Josh there, but things start to heat up between Kyle and his father. The fight starts again and Josh takes Tiffany away from the crowd to her room. She inquires about why Josh is here, but as they are talking, Tiffany's phone rings. She picks it up and we see it's Beth, so she asks to talk to Josh. She tells him that Jacob had lied to him about his midterm extension, but as he is talking on the phone, Tiffany plays the tape. Josh tries to stop the tape, but it is shown that Barry was the one on the tape after all. Later, we see the guys on their way back to their college. Josh tells them that he had broken up with Tiffany and they ended things peacefully. Josh now has an exam in 46 hours, so Ruben offers to teach philosophy to him in 46 hours. They drive throughout the 48 hours, but they reach the college an hour after the exam. He enters the university and finds a bomb squad on the front door of his examination hall, so this takes him by surprise. Later on, they are informed that it was a false alarm, so the students are allowed back to take the exam, with Josh included. While heading back to his dorm, Beth meets Josh and tells him that she created the false alarm to give him time to come back. This gets the two excited, so they end up becoming dates.